really happy to be involved with the foundation. Love providing my time. I feel very lucky that I can be part of it and helping shape the direction. And it's really shocking the impact we're able to make and the number of people that we're able to help. And that doesn't always um, hit home for me because as trustees, we see the numbers, we see the applications come in. We're not often dealing with the actual people, but when you get those letters that talk about how people's lives have changed, I think that really makes it worth it.
Welcome back to Hear Me Out with Belinda. Have you ever wondered how a low-income senior can afford a new set of hearing aids? Well, today's episode is for you. In studio today, we have Richard from the Campbell McLaurin Foundation. So welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's start with, what is the Campbell McLaurin Foundation?
Yeah, so Campbell McLaurin Foundation is a foundation. It was a legacy gift by the late Justice McLaurin, who passed away, left his entire estate to essentially provide funding for low income individuals who need hearing aids. And uh, the Alberta Aids to Daily Living provides some funding for hearing aids for people below certain income thresholds. And Campbell McLaurin Foundation provides a top up in certain cases, or as people exceed some of the AADL funding limits, there's either full or partial funding for hearing aids. And so um, we've got a grant administrator, Sandra Golding. She works closely with hearing aid clinics across it's southern Alberta is where we provide support, and so that's effectively Red Deer and South, and she'll work with the hearing aid clinics to receive applications and vet those and make sure people are getting funding for hearing aids when they need them.
Yeah, that's one. Also, I'm one of the clinics that works with Sandra. So I do have the first-hand knowledge of how impactful it can be when you really can upgrade, the hearing aids, because the government does provide, some funding, but to be able to upgrade them to a better quality product so that people can hear better with their noise is really, and I think great. So how did, I think there's a story there. Why did Justice McLaurin decide to leave his whole estate to the hearing impaired?
Yeah, so Justice McLaurin, he was a judge, a lawyer before that, and he was married, no children, and his wife predeceased him, and he experienced hearing loss late in life, and so as that was happening, one of my friends and mentors told me, he said that Justice McLaurin said something along the lines of, "This is a really terrible condition for somebody to have." And that was a little bit of the impetus for leaving the fund for the foundation to provide hearing aids. And I think the other themes that came through were trying to get the funding to the people who actually need it. So trying to get hearing aids to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to have them, and a real focus on just giving people an opportunity to live a better life, potentially get better, education, get a better job, be a bit more functional in society. And I think those were things that really mattered to him, and became evident later in his life when he was experiencing hearing loss. Um, and back then, I'm told, the hearing aid quality wasn't very good. So you'd have these big devices in your ears, and you'd have to turn them up, and there would be feedback. And the stories are they'd be watching football in his basement, and the volume was loud, and there was a constant battle with the hearing aids, and he really just wanted to help advance that for people who otherwise um, wouldn't be able to have that, and I think it's a great cause, and I'm really happy to be involved now.
Yeah. And so how long ago did you get involved?
So I got involved about 3 years ago, and the mentor I referred to before, Doug Mitchell, he was a lawyer at our firm BLG, and I would describe him as a bit of a big deal in the Calgary legal community and business world, and um, really looked up to him, and when he passed away, I was the person to step in as a trustee to replace him. Him and I had some discussions about that before, and he got me briefed on the foundation. And he was actually a trustee. He knew Justice McLaurin. He was the one watching football with him in his basement, and or one of the many people who did. I guess there was quite a culture of that in the '80s, and so he was a trustee from 1982 when Justice McLaurin died, right up till the day Doug died a few years ago. And there were several other trustees. We've got a number of trustees right now that roll through, but that's effectively how I got involved. And my mom, has experienced some hearing loss as well, and even when I was in my teenage years, university years, that was challenging for us as a family, and hearing aids were expensive. So I understand the cost implications of that for families, middle class families, lower income families, everybody. And I think so I understand that side of it and how hard it can be when the cost of a good hearing aid is three, four, five, $7,000, maybe more once you start layering in other devices and things. And so it is quite a lift, and they don't always work perfectly in the first instance. So you need to sometimes tweak them. You need, supplementary devices. You might need to try a different pair. Um, so that's, I guess, a personal connection for me is that when my mom got her hearing aids and she got ones that worked well, it really was life changing for her. She would say she could hear the birds chirping again, and she became a lot more social. She became a lot more engaged with myself and my sister, and then as we get letters from people who've received funding from CMF, we do get a couple of these every month on average. There are recurring themes. The birds chirping is probably the one that stands out the most for me, but it's really nice to get those letters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yourself being a volunteer, right? I mean, you have your full-time job, and this is your way of giving back to the community or society at large. So thank you for doing that. I think just to touch on the hearing aids there and the important work that I've noticed. I've been in the industry for 17 years now. But one of the things that I've always noticed, just thinking back to, I read an article probably about 15 years ago, and it was an opinion article, but it was an opinion on the different technologies of hearing aids and then how it would relate to a pacemaker. So if you had to take a pacemaker and put different technologies in, how it would impact a person versus the hearing aid. So one of the things that they come up with, if you get that very basic technology and you put it in a pacemaker, the person can, basically lie on the couch and maybe walk up and go to the bathroom. And then if you upgrade their technology slightly, then they'll be able to walk around the block, and then you upgrade them slightly more, they'll be able to function a bit more within society, maybe get a job. And then, of course, the top of the line pacemaker would allow them to, function fully within the society. And of course, that doesn't happen. That's not what pacemakers are about. But I just thought the comparison was really interesting with regards to hearing, because I think a lot of people don't understand that a very basic hearing aid is going to help a person hear quiet one-on-one, but not necessarily give them the noise cancelling and speech enhancement that they need to fully live an active social lifestyle within work, family, and all of those other difficult listening situations. So there is a different in quality. So I really am grateful that we've been able to work with Campbell McLaurin to really upgrade the hearing aids for people, so that, like you said, they can live a very active social lifestyle with, and it's not about the cost, right? It's about, yes, they may be a low income Albertan or Southern Albertan, but they're able to get back in society, contribute, and live a very, socially active life there. Um, Going back to, I've noticed there's been a huge increase in the amount of applicants going to Campbell McLaurin. And of course, I don't discriminate, if anybody's coming into the clinic and they're reported to be a low income Alberta, and I'm like, okay, you meet the criteria, you've lived in Southern Alberta, we can put in an application, and it's not up to me, right? Have you seen an increase in applicants coming through the foundation?
We have, and so when I started, I came on about 3 years ago. Um, we were I would say the number of applications was not significant, and like we needed more. So just a bit of a primer, maybe um, on the tax laws, but essentially there's a disbursement quota which requires that charities spend a minimum amount of their money on charitable activities in a year, and the applications were declining, such that we were concerned that we at some point we were trending towards not spending enough based on the CRA requirements, and so in looking at that and assessing where that trend was going, we said we've got to look at ways to increase y- you know the disbursement on charitable activities, and one of the ways to do that, we increased our funding or our income limits. So um, that obviously opened up a larger base of the population that would qualify for treatment, or for funding from Campbell McLaurin. Um, we also looked at some special projects that year. We did a pilot project with Arts Commons where there were other sources of funding as well, but we were matched, I guess, multiple times over in helping put a Sennheiser system in one of the theaters and some of the common areas, and so that can put the sound directly into people's hearing aids, and that cuts out a lot of the background noise and provides a better user experience. And so, so that was a neat project that we were able to get engaged in. We've worked a bit with Deaf and Hear Alberta on projects. We've got a small project that we did with the fire department where they were putting safety equipment in people's houses, and we provided some funding for that. So those were some ways we supplemented in years where the funding was trending downward. But we also upgraded our website, increased outreach to hearing aid clinics, and the applications started to increase rapidly. And from and this is generally public information on the Canada Revenue Agency website, and in sort of the $400,000 range, when I started, we're well over $1 million this year in funding to various clinics in southern Alberta, and pushing, I would say, our maximum. Applications continue to increase. The demand seems to be extremely high. So we've just put some restrictions on the funding that we're providing in terms of maximums on the um, uh, amount of money available for a pair of hearing aids. So not necessarily pushing into some of those higher end aids, and making sure that essentially we're getting hearing aids to more people instead of perhaps upgrading some aids for people who are already getting them. And so we'll see how that goes. We're going to have a look at the trend over the next few months and see where we're landing, and how we can optimize, get some feedback from hearing aid clinics and others, and probably reassess in the new year where we're at, and if we can continue to make some tweaks. We're always looking to get it right and figure out what's going to make the most impact in the community, and we've got, I've been on for 3 years. I'm starting to get a good understanding of you know um, what's relevant, what's not, and some of the nuance, but still have a long way to go. We've got some more senior board members, we've got some more junior ones, and so always open to hearing information if people have suggestions on what might be a good use of funds. We do have to stick within our objects, which is essentially what was established through the will of Justice McLaurin, and then ultimately actually put through in legislation, in Alberta legislation. So we're actually created by a statute and an amending act, through the Alberta legislature, in the '80s, and that restricts what we're able to disperse funding for. Effectively, medical equipment and treatment are the focal points, with some ability to step outside of that for things like research and certain special projects. But the other thing we're looking at is like how technology is changing, and I'm not sure we know where that's going, but as you probably know, technology is changing very fast, and it's it's going to be interesting to see, how all that evolves and how we need to adapt to that.
Exactly. But it is nice to know. So you don't just help seniors, right? You help any low income Southern Albertan. That's correct, right?
That's correct. And one of the things that actually shocked me, seeing applications coming in, is how many young people need hearing aids. That really, really shocked me. And I think there's a stigma around, having a hearing aid or hearing device. That's maybe starting to reduce because they're becoming far less visible than they once were. But I've been really encouraged to see young people getting hearing aids, going to school, going to university, trying to get better jobs. I mean, I think that's really, something that Justice McLaurin would have wanted. Helping with that upward mobility for an individual where they're at a natural disadvantage.
Yeah. I think that touches on a lot. About 2.5 years ago, you may have heard about the huge dementia study released, and the neuroscientist Dr. Sarah McKay had looked at and mentioned, I think, between 40 to 45% of all dementia cases are preventable. Of that, 8% is by treating your hearing loss in midlife. Another 4 is caused by social isolation later in life. And then depression is another 4% later in life. And then hearing loss ties into the social isolation and depression later in life because, of course, if you can't connect with people, you're losing that ability. So it makes up hearing loss can account to up to 16% of preventable dementia cases. So I think there's been a huge shift being in the industry, the importance of hearing. A lot of people just used to shrug it off prior unless they had someone in their, close family um, that had a hearing loss. They couldn't really understand the impact of a hearing loss and how it can disconnect you from people, from work, from, doing better in school. I'll often talk about my son who doesn't have a traditional hearing loss. He has something called auditory processing disorder. So it affects a lot of elementary school kids, and unless they learn strategies, because it's a lifelong disorder, but if they don't know strategies of how to cope within a noisy environment because they test with the normal, so traditional hearing aid won't help them. But they can be very disruptive in class, right? And so they are the naughty kids, right? They are the kids sent to the corner or asked to leave, right? But if you can treat them, we treated with a little FM system so that he could hear the teacher better. And um, the story is very emotional for me because the day he was the naughty kid. And so if you've ever worked within school children and stuff, the naughty kid is on a field trip is always with the teacher because they don't want to chase the volunteers away, right? So the naughty kids go with the teacher. So after knowing this and him coming back after several trips, saying he was with the teacher, I knew that there was a problem, and we were looking into a few things at the time. But once I got him into his Roger system, and he was actually hearing the teacher, and she was a new teacher, and she had actually called me into tears that day and saying she thinks it's the first time that he's actually heard the story because he sat there staring at her, smiling, and that's just the impact of hearing, right? That's just how it impacts everyone. So going back to, I think Justice would be proud of treating the hearing loss and getting kids into university, right? Because it can really I think it would be everything from your self-confidence to believing, can you actually, you're a professional. Like, can you become a professional? Are you, to use the word, are you stupid? Can you not understand this? But really, are you actually hearing what's actually happening? So I think there's a big shift coming. I do really think that, and the importance of hearing is out there. And so being able to reach more burdens, I think it's a good direction that the foundation is going in. And like I said, it's always open to see. I'm always pro better technology because I've seen it in the clinic. The better technology, the more success we have. But technology is also improving itself. Like the hearing aids that we're dispensing today are hugely improved over even 10 years ago, right? So even your entry-level product is equivalent of a higher level, 10 years ago, right? So there's always this movement going on. So it's just to pivot and adjust and to make sure, like I said, we're reaching as many people to treat their hearing loss as possible. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and then I guess the other thing that jumps to mind as you're talking about treating the hearing loss is maybe a bit of a call to action for anyone who's watching, but it's around, what do you do once you've got the hearing aid, and I know that that social isolation, which could build up over years and years and years and years, is really quite difficult for people, and to find avenues to get back and reintegrated in the community, I think is something that I've seen, people work through very hard. And I think one of the things I was proud of with the Arts Commons collaboration is just the amount of accessible programming they have, and the effort that they make to, um, to make those events something that's attractive for people, with hearing loss, or who have a hearing aid, or and it's a public area where people can go and socialize, and there's no pressure to talk to anyone. You can enjoy yourself. And I think, the more awareness there is about any programs that are out there, um, I think that's a positive. I think that a lot of the people who may have been socially isolated for a long time, then get a hearing aid, they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They're not really comfortable, in some of those settings. They're hearing new things, and so I really applaud anyone who's making an effort to, create a safe and comfortable space for people reintegrating into, society, once they can hear again, and once they can communicate with people again, because I think it can be, it can take a lot of courage for those individuals to actually, make that lifestyle change, because they're not used to it.
Yeah. I think absolutely. Yeah, we've got to get back to focusing on our communities, right? Strengthening within the communities and just being open to helping them and just acknowledging kindness, right? I think everybody speaks about being kind again, right? We need to get back to being kind to people and treating people the way we want to be treated. So if somebody's going into that and stepping out of the comfort zone, the community needs to embrace them, I guess, to really help them. So for anybody listening that is feeling a calling or a passion to help, does the foundation accept donations now? Like, does
We don't solicit donations. We are a registered charity, for income tax purposes. We don't have a donation page or anything on the website. Really, all the funding has been provided by the estate of Justice McLaurin. There may have been a couple of other small donations throughout the years before I got involved, um, but we're not growing actively. Um, Certainly, if people are interested in the cause and they want to reach out, we're happy to have a conversation. But that's not a focus, at this time. Um, Although, if we can help in any way, we're happy to have a discussion.
absolutely? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to let our listeners know?
If this is sort of a bit of a wrap up, I guess one of the other things that we talked about a bit before we came on the air here was just on, maybe a bit of the experience I've had as a volunteer trustee for the foundation. Um, it's been a really nice experience for me, and an opportunity to use some of the skills that I learned in my law practice. I'm a tax lawyer by training, so some of these technical rules are my day to day, and the way I look at it is a way to use my superpower for good, and help a foundation, accomplish something. I think that I've met some really neat people. The board members I've worked with are all at the top level of whatever it is that they do, whether they're, a lawyer, an ENT, an audiologist, business person. So real opportunity. I think that's another call to action. Anyone who's looking for mentorship, or um, an opportunity to get out of their comfort zone, is volunteering on a board or for a charity, can really be rewarding in a bunch of different ways, and help you grow as an individual. And that's certainly been the case for me. Um, so, I think, really happy to be involved with the foundation. Love, providing my time. I feel very lucky that I can be part of it, and helping shape the direction. And it's really shocking the impact we're able to make, and the number of people that we're able to help. And that doesn't always, um, hit home for me, because as trustees, we see the numbers, we see the applications come in. We're not often dealing with the actual people, but when you get those letters, that talk about how people's lives have changed, I think that really, makes it worth it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm one of the lucky few that get to experience that, right, on a daily basis, working with them and seeing it and having those conversations with them. Something crossed my mind that I just got to get back to as we were busy talking there about this community and coming back to it. If somebody is listening to this and they do feel like they need help buying a hearing aid, should they be looking, should they just be Googling like a hearing aid clinic? Should they be going to the foundation themselves? Like, how would you advise any or our audience to get the help that they need to get a hearing aid if they feel like financing is the obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to start with a hearing aid clinic, close to home. Go in, speak with the people there, get tested, and to the extent that funding is a concern, you may want to check out the Campbell McLaurin Foundation website so you've got a sense of whether or not you would meet our income thresholds. And if the clinic isn't aware, the foundation certainly present it to them. Most of the clinics, are familiar with us. We receive applications from most or all of the clinics, in the Calgary area and quite a few throughout southern Alberta. And often uh, they'll help in some way with the process of getting the application submitted. We've got a grant administrator, Sandra Golding. She does a fantastic job working with the clinic. The applications don't always come in perfectly, and sometimes there's missing information. So she'll work with everybody to make sure that gets resolved before it comes for final approval. Um, we see sometimes special circumstances as well that don't fit necessarily exactly within the criteria. Those are higher threshold to get approved, but if you're in need, I think you start with the hearing aid clinic and some background on the foundation, and hopefully there's a solution.
That sounds good. Thank you so much. I think that is all the questions I want to thank you again for coming out. It was great to have a discussion with you. And once again, being in the industry, I do appreciate all the help because I know really how impactful it has been for many of my clients along the way. So thank you again for volunteering and thank you again for coming on the show and speaking a bit about the Campbell McLaurin Foundation.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me, and really appreciate all the hard work you do, getting people fitted and into good hearing aids and involving the foundation as well.
Thank you.